Hello class, welcome to the second video of this week's lecture series. So in this video, I'm going to give you a quick demo of how we can create an HTML form. So the HTML form that we'll be creating in this video is the one right here. Note how the title of this form is Building HTML Form, and the information that we are trying to collect with this form is the personal information, that is the first and the last name, the date of birth. Note how we have the drop-down options in here, the calendar. And we're also trying to collect the gender information. So in this, with the gender information, we are utilizing the radio buttons. The radio button, that's another tag in HTML. And address information, select country, and we are utilizing the drop-down function in here. Phone number, email, and we also have a submit button in here. And when you submit When you click the submit button, it takes us to another page. So that's what we're trying to build in this lecture. So let's get started. Okay, let me try and open up my notepad. Oh, sorry. Okay, so the first tag we're going to type in is HTML/HTML. Let me try to save this first. I'll type it in here. Let me create a 728. And I'll call this HTML form demo and save it as HTML right here. So that way, all of those tags, will have its own color, and it sort of makes easy to code in the Notepad++. If you are using other IDE such as Bracket++, Dreamweaver, anything, that is fine. I mean, as long as you're comfortable with the IDE, that's okay. So in my case, I'm using Notepad++, but you can use any other IDEs. So let me go ahead and type in another information in here. I'm going to type, so the first thing we're going to do in here is we will create this title for this form. Let me try and call it head. And within this form, I will try to call it title/title, and I'm going to call it Building HTML Form. So let's save it and let's try to run it. If I try to open it, Google. So right now it's empty, but but we have the title of the form in here. So let's go ahead and add in other features. So let's call in the legend tag /legend. Note how I am immediately closing an HTML tag right after I started. This is a good programming practice because that way you won't miss closing any of the HTML tags. So a good programming practice, always as soon as you open an HTML tag, close it immediately. So I'm going to give this a class name of, and I'm going to call it legend. And I'm going to call it, what's in here? Personal information. So once again, the legend tag is used to define child contents of a form of a page, and likewise, class tag. We will be covering more in details about the utilization of the class tag when we reach the topic of CSS. But for now, the real quickly, if I have to tell you what the class tag does is, with the class tag, with the HTML class tag, you will be able to write CSS rule to select that particular class or that particular block. So once we complete this form, I will give you a quick demonstration of how class can be utilized in HTML form without having to go through all the CSS thing. So but I'll get that I'll get that towards the end of the video or the form. So that we have it, and so we have it, and then now the first name and the last name, let's call it div tag /div. I'm going to do it in here, and label for let's call it first name, and close it /label, and I'm going to have it first name, and I'm going to copy paste this one, last name. So let's save it and let's see how this looks. Okay, it doesn't look that fancy, right? Okay, now let's try and make it more fancy. So if you go back to our original form, notice how we have the text box in here to fill in the first name and the last name. So this is exactly what we're going to do now. Next. So for that, I'm going to have to put a text folder, because this field over here, it's taking input, right? You can type in your name. So this fields in here, they're taking input values from the user. So because of that, the tag to the HTML tag that supports taking of data from the user is the input tag, and that would be input type. And because we are collecting text data, we are going to type this and placeholder equal to first name. So we have it here. We would now do the same thing for the last name, but let me make the change here. Last name, type, last name. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to put the last name field right below the first name. So for that, we will add in the break line tag, BR, and again BR. So let's see how this looks now. So I think this looks much better now, at least cleaner, I would say. Now we go back again in here. So once we do this, let's tab it this column just to differentiate that this is one block of code. So we are now done with the first name and the last name block. So the next block that we're going to start is, before that, let's type in the break line tag so that there is a space. Again, we start another block of the form, and the next information that we are trying to collect is the date of birth. Again, so for this we are going to do, let me try and copy paste this thing, okay, because that would be more efficient. And I'm going to type this as date of birth, and I'm going to label it as date of birth. Give it a break line tag in here. Input type is equal to date, value equals to, that's going to be user selected. And yeah, so the reason why we have this data type as date for the date of birth variable is because the data type that we are trying to collect for the date of birth in here is the date value, which is why the input type for this field is going to be the date. So now let's let's save it and try and run the form again. So see, because this is, this is done automatically by the HTML date tag, so yeah. So let's add in more lines of code. So the next variable that we want to add is the gender, and it has a radio buttons, male and female. So again, I'm going to copy paste this line of code. I'm going to call this gender, and the input type is going to be the radio. We are going to call it as gender, new. I'm going to copy paste this line here, and this time around I'm going to call it female. Now let's save it and let's try to run it again. So see, we have two radio buttons in here for male and female. So let's try and add in another element. So now the next line of code that we're trying to add is the address field. So this block ends in here. I'm going to start in another div tag /div. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to copy paste this code and call it label for address, and type it here as address. So I'm going to copy paste this line again, bring it here, and I'm going to call it street address. I'm going to copy paste this again and call it address line 2. Copy paste it again, call it city, state, and zip code. So I'm going to save my code in here, and I want to show you something in this form. So note how in this country variable we need a drop down. So this is something very different than just a text field. So to implement the drop down, let's go back to our form, and for this it's going to be select class is equal to select options, and I'm going to type it as option value is equal to country, and select country and close the options. So I'm going to copy paste this line and give one of the drop down value as USA.